50 years. That's how long they carried it with them. Tucked away in the corners of their minds where no one else could see. For half a century. These survivors of the Pacific War lived with a secret so profound, so intensely personal, that speaking it aloud would have felt impossible. It wasn't just the horrors they had endured. The relentless battles, the endless hunger, the constant fear. It was something deeper. A pact. A promise made in the rawest moments of survival. When the world had collapsed around them and their only certainty was the presence of one another. Imagine being a young soldier, or a civilian caught in the chaos, thrust into a situation where every day could be your last. In those moments, ordinary notions of friendship, loyalty, and morality are tested in ways most of us can't even begin to imagine. And it was there, in the midst of unimaginable suffering, that this pact was formed. Not written down, not sworn before a crowd, but etched into their very beings. It was a promise to bear witness, to remember, and, above all, to protect each other's memories and secrets. It was a silent acknowledgement that the world might never understand, might never care, and so they would carry it themselves, together. The weight of it was staggering. These were people who had seen the best and worst of humanity compressed into a single, violent moment. Some lost family. Others lost friends, and all of them lost pieces of themselves that could never be restored. But in that shared trauma, they found an unspoken agreement. What happened between them in those days? The choices they made to survive, the acts they were forced into. These were theirs alone to hold. To speak of it would risk judgment, misunderstanding, even legal repercussions. And yet, the pact was not merely about secrecy. It was a promise to honor the dead, to preserve the dignity of those who did not make it, and to safeguard a story that the world was not ready to hear. Over the decades, life moved forward. The survivors built homes, raised families, and pursued careers, all while carrying this invisible burden. To the outside world, they were ordinary people. Neighbors, co-workers, friends. But beneath the surface, each thought, each memory, each quiet moment alone was a reminder of that pact. It shaped their relationships, their decisions, even their sleep. They learned to navigate a world that had moved on without them, all the while holding on to a secret too heavy to share. And yet, the pact was not a chain. In many ways, it was a lifeline. It bound them together across continents, across decades, a quiet fraternity of experience that no one else could enter. When one survivor felt the pain of remembering too acutely, another would simply be there, understanding in a glance what words could never capture. That silent solidarity became a form of survival in itself. A way to process trauma, to carry grief, and to ensure that those moments, as horrifying as they were, never faded into erasure. As the years passed, the world changed. The war receded into history books, and younger generations asked questions that were met with evasions or silence. But the pact endured. It was not forgotten. It lived in letters tucked away in drawers, in photographs worn at the edges, in late-night recollections shared quietly with those who could understand. And slowly, imperceptibly, the survivors came to realize something remarkable. The secret they had carried for 50 years was not just theirs to bear. It was a story that needed to be told, a memory that could finally step into the light. But first, they had to honor the pact, to respect the bond that had held them together through the darkest days of their lives. And that is what makes this story extraordinary. Not just the events of the war itself, but the quiet, steadfast commitment of those who survived. 50 years of silence was not merely avoidance. It was a testament to loyalty, to remembrance, and to the profound human capacity to bear witness when the world might not yet be ready to listen. After 50 years, something shifted. The silence that had been their shield, their bond, and their burden began to feel different. The pact that had once protected them now weighed heavily in a new way, as if the very act of carrying it for so long was asking for release. They had lived entire lifetimes with the memories locked inside, and yet the world around them, the children and grandchildren who had grown up asking questions they could never answer, was quietly pressing against that wall of silence. Slowly, imperceptibly, the survivors began to realize that breaking the silence would not dishonor their pact but honor it in a deeper, more meaningful way. It was no longer just about secrecy. It was about truth, memory, and finally allowing the story to breathe in the light. The decision to speak was not sudden, nor was it easy. 50 years of conditioning, of carrying the weight alone, does not simply dissolve overnight. For many, the thought of revealing what they had endured brought a rush of fear. Fear of judgment, of reopening old wounds, of questioning whether anyone could truly understand the choices made in the extremity of war. And yet, intertwined with that fear was something equally powerful. A quiet determination that the story could no longer remain in the shadows. They began to see that the world needed to know not only the history but the human cost, the sacrifices and the resilience hidden behind statistics and battle reports. The moment of revelation often came in fragments. Small acts of courage that gradually built into something larger. A letter shared with a trusted friend. A private conversation that became the seed of confession. Slowly, these individual moments intertwined, creating a collective decision to speak out together. And when they did, it was not just a retelling of events. It was a reclaiming of agency. A way of taking the narrative out of the hands of history books and placing it into the hands of those who lived it. Each voice that joined the chorus added layers of depth, emotion, and nuance that no record, no textbook, could ever capture. Revealing the story after so many decades had an almost sacred significance. For the survivors, it was a way to honor those who had not lived to tell their own stories. Every name remembered, every act recounted, became a testament to lives lost and sacrifices made. It was also a way to confront the lingering shadows of guilt and trauma. To confront the what-ifs that had haunted them silently for decades. Speaking aloud was a form of healing. An acknowledgement that their experiences were real, valid, and worthy of remembrance. It was a step toward transforming personal pain into collective memory, so that future generations could understand not just the war itself, but the human hearts and minds it touched and changed forever. When they finally stepped into the light, it became clear how powerful the act of revelation could be. Audiences listening to their stories were often struck not by the facts alone but by the depth of emotion, the quiet dignity, and the resilience that threaded through every recollection. The survivors' courage became contagious, prompting others who had remained silent to consider the possibility of sharing their own experiences. What had once seemed unshareable became, through the very act of telling, a bridge between past and present, between memory and understanding. The story's emergence after 50 years also reshaped how the world remembers the Pacific War. It reminded historians, scholars, and the public that history is not only about strategy and politics but about people. The ones who fought, suffered, endured, and survived. By finally speaking, the survivors provided a lens through which the past could be seen with clarity, empathy, and humanity, reminding us that silence, while protective, can also obscure truths that are vital to understanding ourselves and the world we inhabit. Ultimately, their decision to reveal the pact, after so many years, is a lesson in courage and timing. It is a reminder that some stories need patience, that some truths are too heavy to bear too soon, and that the right moment can transform silence into a powerful act of remembrance. 50 years of waiting were not wasted. They were the crucible in which understanding, empathy, and wisdom were forged. And when at last the story emerged, it was not just history being told. It was a profound human truth finally finding its voice.